Hello friends, good evening and welcome to another session of Tech Tablet Daily Dose with Varun Rao. In today's session, we would be looking at SAP Ui5 Fiori interview questions, and this is the very first video being made on this topic, so this is the part 1 of the interview questions. So the aim of session would be to look at some very frequently asked SAP Ui5 Fiori technical questions. Now this cannot be categorized for freshers or for experienced, but these are some questions which happen to come in very general for most of them. And then we would be looking at the general business expectations from a Fiori developer that is expected by a client. So when we talk of this arena, that is business expectations, then a Fiori developer is definitely expected to be one person who has good knowledge on web development and or data, which is similar or very close to ABAP as well, right? So business expectations are that you have a good command on front end and back end. Front end including your HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript and jQuery to a certain extent, XML. Now these are the various elements or different software technical tools that we use in the front end. And when we talk of back end, then we have OData or maybe JSON as well, right? So you need to have a good grip when you talk of your development part, be it the front end web development or your application development, and be it the back end development as well. And then we would also look at how do we answer in an interview, because when we talk of answering in an interview, it is not just your knowledge which is essential, but you also need to show certain other skills which are highly required for your chances to be more when you're talking of an interview, and that too if it's a technical one, then definitely yes. So let's start with the questions. The first question is, what is SAP UI5? Now different people have different views on this, so this is one question that is generally asked by many of them about SAP and what is UI5. So SAP UI5 is nothing but it's a client-side rendering library just like HTML, and it strictly follows the rich internet application standards, and it is based on JavaScript, which provides a very light framework for the applications to run or for the applications to work. Now these work very well on desktops and mobiles and tablets, so you talk of any gadget which displays, yes, SAP Ui5 Fiori applications can be accessed with equal ease. Now when I talk of Ui5 Fiori, this is one and the same module. Now many people have a confusion if Ui5 and Fiori are two different modules, but it is not. These are, or this is one similar module, and Ui5 and Fiori, the only difference between these terminologies is Ui5 is a customized application, whereas Fiori is a standard application provided to you by SAP itself. Then the second question is, what is MVC? Now MVC is an architecture which is abbreviated as Model, View and Controller. Now this is the architecture that we follow to design any UI application and to also achieve reusability and extensibility of an application. Now these features or these properties are used when you want to make any kind of changes in the future. Now what is a model? A model is nothing but your data. It is your backend data which is represented, and then you have a view which is visible to the user, like whatever you see on a screen has been designed by a developer to look that way. Now that is the view. And then you have a controller which takes care of the logical operations behind the functioning of your view. So you have a view, and if that view is working, then it is thanks to the controller which handles all the logic, right? So we follow MVC architecture not just to differentiate between view and controller and the data model, but this also has many security features, and there's a high level research and study invested behind the usage of MVC architecture. You also have various security reasons, so we have many other concerns for using MVC. Then we have, what do we all need to start development in Eclipse? Now Eclipse is the application that is used when you want to develop the front end part of your SAP UI5 application. Now in Eclipse you have various versions like Mars, Neon. Now you select the required version you want, and then once this is downloaded onto your system, you import the SAP UI5 toolkit from the HANA marketplace that is available in your Eclipse. So you just have to go to the drop down in install new software, and there you would be able to see your HANA marketplace, and then after which you have to connect your system or your Eclipse to the SAP UI5 ABAP repository to ensure that your data is exchanged and your front end is finally being saved into SCAT, which is the object repository. And then you have what is the main difference between HTML5 and SAP UI5. Now this might definitely come up as a thought that when we have HTML5 already, why do we need another which is SAP UI5? Now HTML5 is a language and it does not have, or it is not embedded with any other programming capabilities other than being a markup language. Now SAP UI5 on the other end is a framework which follows MVC architecture for any of the applications working, right? And then HTML5 is basically to create a simple web page with no logic, but UI5 is a complete package covering all the technologies, that is HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript, jQuery and all these, and XML views. So SAP UI5 is a whole lot of package, so that is the reason why we call it as a framework based on MVC architecture, whereas HTML5 is used to create a simple web page, right? And then we have what is a responsive web design. Now when you talk of being responsive, if you have ever noticed, when you have this auto rotation on your mobile, then whenever you turn or you flip your phone, then you would see that even your screen is suited accordingly. Now that is what is a responsive web design. Now apart from this, even if you play this in a computer, you would have a feel different, but yet it would not be damaged. It would be adjusted accordingly. Now that is what is called responsive. So being responsive is nothing but you have the same look and the same feel even if you're using in a desktop or a mobile or a tablet. What is a component in SAP UI5? Now components are nothing but independent and reusable parts that we use in SAP UI5 applications. Now when we create an application, we create a component.js file, right? Now this is one which encapsulates everything in it. Now you have all your application parts which are encapsulated in the component. Now this makes the structure, of an application to be easily understood, right? And apart from this, one of the major advantages of using a component is you're making it independent and be reusable. So just keep these things in mind when you're talking of a component. Then what is the difference between the two backend models, the two famous backend models that we use, OData model and JSON model? JSON is nothing but a client-side model, and it is generally used when the data that you have to enter or when the data set is small. But OData on the other hand can actually consume and display a large data, because you have OData generally stored in ABAP repository. So this is a server-side model, right? So the data is stored and retrieved and sent to OData only. But when you're talking of JSON model, then you have your JSON model acting as a client-side model, and this is used when your data is very small. And the other question is, what are the types of components used? Now you have two types of components, one being the faceless and the other being the UI. Now you can check about them in much more detail if you go to the SAP HANA on demand page. You have a lot of information about them, but then if you still look at the interview perspective, then faceless component is one which does not have a UI, okay, and it is just used for business logic. Like you have formatters which are used in faceless components. But then when you're talking of a UI component, then this is used in component.js, where you are extending the core component using a class which is SAP UI Core UI component class. And because of this, you have rendering features which are added into your UI component. Now this is another question which is asked quite frequently, so just stay clever and smart when you're answering this. Now when you're talking of the data models available, you have 4 data models, but there is only JSON and OData which supports two-way binding and which are most frequently used. And if you want to categorize between JSON and OData on a 100% node, then I would say 95% is OData model, because I have hardly come across any JSON models till date. So you have JSON, XML, resource and OData if you want to answer. JSON is a client-sided model and it supports two-way binding, and this is generally used when the data is small. Now when you talk of XML, this is also a client-sided model which is intended for small data, but then this is hardly used. And then you have the resource model, which is also another client-side model, but this is used to maintain resource bundles like texts and all, but this again is hardly used. And then finally you have your OData model, which is the most important one, and this supports two-way binding and it has a direct connection with ABAP, and the data can be saved and be retrieved as well, right? So this is what is OData model. So you have these 4 types of data models available if you want to talk about. And then finally, on the last question, we have what are the different types of views that are available in SAP UI5 for creation. And when you're talking of views, be very specific, because in real time we do not use all the available views. SAP very clearly recommends you to use XML views because they have a very light UI, and then these are the most friendly views. And now when I say friendly, it means that they are very easily understandable and understood by the person who's developing, or for future purposes as well. Now when I say future purposes, it means that now if there is another enhancement to be done, or if there is another change that's to be brought out, or tomorrow when you leave your organization, the fellow developer would be easily able to understand the XML view. So apart from this, we have 4 views. One is JSON, the second is XML, the third is JavaScript view, and the fourth is HTML view. Now when HTML view is generally used for common web pages, but we do not use for SAP UI5 applications, right? And the same is for JSON or JavaScript or HTML. We generally create views using XML in real-time scenario. So I hope you have enjoyed the session and have learned something from this. All that you have to do is stay tuned to this channel and spread, so that as many people as possible can get help if that is the information that they're looking for. So stay tuned. I hope you have enjoyed. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a great day ahead.